It's a good thing my voice can carry. Oh, here we go. Audio. Great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. If those of you who do not have a seat yet, please find your seats so that we can get started. All right. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to the second annual State of Public Safety Address by the District Attorney. Before we begin, I'd like to bring up my good friend, State Senator Angelique Ashby, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for standing. Put our hand to our heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, before we begin today, I think it's important for us to pause and take a moment to acknowledge the devastating destruction and loss caused by the fires down in the Los Angeles region right now. Many of us have friends, families, and colleagues in the areas. Our thoughts and our prayers go to the residents and the first responders that are fighting the blaze. We pray for their safety. So I would like to acknowledge, as we begin today, some of our elected officials that are here today. My good friend, State Senator Angelique Ashby, our Assemblymember Stephanie Nguyen, our Mayor of Elk Grove, Bobbie Singh-Allen, our Mayor of Sacramento, Kevin McCarty, recently elected, as well as two of our supervisors here in Sacramento, both Rich Desmond and Pat Hume. Also like to acknowledge some of our other guests, especially in terms of our law enforcement, from our U.S. Marshal Lasha Boyden, our Sheriff Jim Cooper, our Sacramento Chief of Police, Kathy Lester. Thank you for being here as well. Along with, I think, the representative from the Folsom Police Department, Chief Hillman and Lieutenant Lockhart. Also like to recognize as well Lisa Kaplan, council member for the city of Sacramento, our former city manager, Howard Chan, and also like to thank Chet Madison, who's the police chief of the Sacramento State Police Department. Thank you for being here as well. And we have some new council member out in Folsom, which is where I live. We have new council member Barbara Leary and Justin Ratho as well. Thank you for being here today. And I'd also like to give a special thank to our U.S. Attorney, Phil Talbert. As many of you have seen in the recent article in the SAC-B, he's going to be stepping down as the U.S. Attorney. He's been a true servant of the community in the federal level. And Phil, I want to thank you for your years of service and thank you for coming. I also want to thank Chief Matt Tamayo from Rancho Cordova as well, and Chief Bobbie Davis from Elk Grove. If I have missed anybody else, my apologies, and I'm sure that I will swing around and recognize you in a moment. So 2 years ago, when I was sworn into office, and I also see Sid Patel, our special agent in charge of the FBI as well, who just stepped in. So 2 years ago, when I was sworn into office, I cited an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so when we talk about preserving promises that we've made, when we talk about connecting with all communities and not just some community, when we talk about protecting people, especially the most vulnerable among us, we talk about moving forward together. And so this last year in 2024, we have moved together. We have listened together. We have talked together. We've worked together and collaborated together to ensure these three things. And it is that theme of working together that I want to focus on, not only in 2024, but moving forward this year. And to really highlight some of the things that our office has done in working with the community, I want to take a step back. And I want to go over and share with you a short video about the things that we have done together this last year. I am a career prosecutor, not a career politician. My career has focused on giving victims a voice, delivering dignity to the injured, and providing people with the power of justice. As a district attorney of California's capital, I have relentlessly fought to hold the scourge of retail theft accountable in the courtroom. I've held the city of Sacramento accountable when I was the first prosecutor in this country to sue its own city for failing to address the in-house crisis. Nobody knows the cost more than the small business owner standing behind us that they've had to shut down. Nobody knows the cost more than some of the people standing here that have dealt with the unhoused crisis on the streets and how it affects their public safety in their homes. Nobody knows the cost more than little girls that have to stop playing soccer in a soccer field because it's riddled with needles. Nobody knows the cost more than that. And I've also held the hand of a grieving mother who lost their child to fentanyl poisoning.
Going to be an investigation done similar to like a regular homicide case where we were following really who sold the drugs, when did they sell the drugs, and did they sell it knowing that it contained fentanyl. We need to do whatever we can to make sure that those who are peddling and selling death essentially with fentanyl are held responsible.
This is not about politics or partisanship, but rather it's about public safety. It's not about nonsense, but rather it's about common sense. As the people's prosecutor, I believe that the people who have borne the impact of retail theft, homelessness, drug addiction, and fentanyl poisoning be heard.
It's a determination with each and every one of you that over this year, we will protect people, connect communities, and preserve our promises. Thank you.
So we would like to spend this morning going over some of the accomplishments in this past year, looking back, but also looking forward. But the theme is working together, whether it's looking back or looking forward. And so one of the most serious crisis that we face in our community is dealing with our unhoused crisis. And when you look at the unhoused crisis in Sacramento, starting from 2016 to 2017 in particular, we've seen the unhoused population in Sacramento grow exponentially by 250% in that time period. That rate of increase is one of the highest rates of increase anywhere in the country. And that rate of increase was particularly focused in the city of Sacramento. And so working together, we listened to the community. We listened to those that were living on the streets and those that were living off the streets, talking about the impact of being unhoused had on them and their public safety, those that were dying on the streets and those that were dealing with the death and the destruction on the streets. And so in September of last year, my office became the first district attorney's office in the entire country to sue its own city for not addressing the homeless crisis. And since the lawsuit was filed in September of 2023, what we have seen is a 29% reduction in homelessness in the city. What we've seen, not only with that reduction in the city, we've seen the large encampments begin to get removed. And let's go over some of those locations. We see what happened here on C Street before in the summer of 2023, and then after the lawsuit on the right-hand side, how the encampments were clear. We see over here on R Street, camp after camp, needles after needle, piles of feces after piles of feces, and then we see after the lawsuit what happened. And we see over here in the area on W Street, in front of people's homes, the encampments and the tents and the disaster that was there, people dying on the streets, and we see what happened after the lawsuit. And I'll tell you this, after Grants Pass was decided by the United States Supreme Court, of which our office filed an amicus brief in support of the Supreme Court's decision, after the governor rightfully and righteously issued an order, an executive order to clear encampments, then Mayor of Sacramento decided and went out publicly and said, we're not going to change anything. It's business as usual. But what happened was, in conjunction with the lawsuit, City Manager Howard Chan worked hand in hand with Chief Lester to develop a protocol of enforcement along with the city attorney. And they worked tirelessly to clear those encampments, to have compassionate enforcement. And through the leadership of certain council members, whether it was Lisa Kaplan or whether it was Eric Guerra or whether it was Rick Jennings, there was a concerted effort through the leadership of the city manager and the chief of police to start compassionately offering services and shelter and clearing those encampments. And that has made the difference, along with the lawsuit holding the city accountable for their lack of enforcement. But during this entire time, what I would tell you is that one of the partners that we had in dealing with the unhoused crisis and the steady, strong leadership came from the Board of Supervisors. And I want to invite at this time up Supervisor Pat Hume and Rich Desmond to talk about some of the things that the county has done and continues to do this past year and this coming year to deal with the unhoused crisis.
Thank you, District Attorney Ho, and thank all of you for being here today. I'm glad you explained why you have a couple of county supervisors up here at a State of Public Safety address. I think it speaks to the fact that, enforcement and public safety is not what it looked like 25 years ago in the state of California. We realize that we can't handle all of these complex problems through enforcement alone. That has to be done hand in hand with having appropriate resources for people who happen to find themselves living out on the streets or in a bad situation because of circumstances beyond their control, whether that's addiction or whether that's losing a job, losing a home. And that's where the county, as the primary social services provider, has to step in to provide that hand-in-hand approach with the enforcement organizations. And I got to tell you, the state of public safety in the county of Sacramento is very strong. I feel like it's stronger than it's been in an awfully long time because of leadership like District Attorney Thien Ho, my good friend Sheriff Jim Cooper, and leadership from so many law enforcement professionals and leaders here today, including the California Highway Patrol, which I think you may have left out, my prior employer. But a couple things, one of the shots that the District Attorney does not show there is another great example of before and after when he got involved, the corner of Howe and Fair Oaks, which, as many of you recall, in my supervisory district, right on the edge of the unincorporated area in the city, major problem to the businesses and the residents living there, major public safety issues, and District Attorney Ho recognized right away that just because someone is homeless does not mean that's an excuse to cause problems for our businesses and residents. And thank you specifically from me and my district and my constituents for all the work you did there. In the last year, we worked very closely with the district attorney in supporting a new homeless encampment ordinance in the county of Sacramento, which will prevent some of these issues occurring between businesses and residents while still keeping the pressure on the county to make sure services are available for folks. We work directly with District Attorney Ho. I was actually happy to bring him into the California State Association of Counties to speak on a number of occasions and get CSAC to endorse Prop 36. Because Prop 36, what it does is it makes a promise. It makes a promise to communities that you are no longer going to have to put up with open-air drug markets in your neighborhood. As a small business owner, you are no longer going to have to put up with rampant retail theft. But at the same time, it made a promise to people that if you are struggling from addiction and mental illness, there may be this intervention, this law enforcement intervention. But that intervention is going to come with supports for addiction and mental illness, and that is where the county comes in. And that's where I'm so happy. I know my colleague, Supervisor Hume, and good friend, so happy to be working so closely with you and all the partners here to make sure we continue to bring these treatment resources online. Inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, combined with more sheltering resources. So folks who are experiencing homelessness, living out on our streets, they have an alternative so they can turn their lives around. So thank you for having me here today, and I'll turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning. Great to see so many of you. And I want to go back and just touch on something that the DA mentioned, that it was a campaign statement of his, but it's also a proverb, and it's something that really speaks to the core of this issue, and that is when he said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That speaks to collaboration. And I believe that with a colleague like Supervisor Desmond, with the District Attorney Ho, Sheriff Jim Cooper, Mayor Singh-Allen, Mayor McCarty, the other city councils, Assemblymember Nguyen, Senator Ashby, we have a team in place that recognizes the importance not just of this issue from a humanitarian crisis standpoint, from a provision of services standpoint, but from a public safety and civilized society standards of expectations standpoint. And that's important to remember as we talk about this, in my estimation, because the Constitution of the United States provides every citizen the pursuit of happiness. And I believe when your exercisation of free agency negatively impacts someone else's utilization of public resources, their ability to provide for themselves and operate a business, or their feeling of comfort and safety that they ought to be afforded by their government, that is not okay. And unfortunately, as was mentioned, the grants pass decision, which was a corrective measure, or at least a corrective interpretation of a lower court's determination, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, when they enacted the Boise decision that essentially said punishing the act of sleeping is considered cruel and unusual punishment. or criminalizing the act of sleeping is considered cruel and unusual punishment. That was the gist of the argument of that case. However, the way that case had been interpreted was being used as a shield for inaction, to say we can't do anything to disturb them if we don't have somewhere else to move them. And so what we did is we put a team together, Supervisor Desmond, myself, folks from county staff, folks from the district attorney and folks from his office, Sheriff Cooper and folks from the sheriff's department. We went down to San Diego because in advance of that grants pass decision, and in fact it was before that decision came down that we went and did this, they had enacted an anti-camping ordinance in order to get folks out of impacting the downtown, which had significant reasons and impacts to them as a community, as a ability to function. And they'd moved them into stood-up villages made of ice tents that had a low stand-up cost. They were impermanent, and so that we could be taken back down and or moved if we felt we needed to. They felt they needed to move them. And so we studied that, and we came back and we said we need to start being more proactive in this. And so that's when we enacted an anti-camping ordinance for the county of Sacramento. And I know some of our neighboring jurisdictions have things on the books to do the same. And so that's the first thing, is that we have to sort of have a unified approach so that we are not just squeezing the balloon, right? Where you squeeze it here and it blows out somewhere else. And we don't want to play whack-a-mole. And the advocacy groups point to this policies as encouraging sweeps. And so we recognize that there's nothing about that is curative. But what it does is it changes the dynamic of the conversation to say what is currently happening is not okay. And I have become a fan of saying that what you tolerate, you can expect. And when you have those pictures of what we saw impacting residents, impacting businesses, impacting people's ability to enjoy beautiful parks and sidewalks that have been paid for by all of us and co-opted by an individual for their own purposes, and many times defended from a hostile standpoint, that's not okay. And so I stand here today very proud to be a part of a group who recognizes that, who wants to change the tenor of the conversation. And the next step, if I may be so bold, is to say, now that we have Prop 36 in place, now that we have Care Court, County of Sacramento has adopted that as a policy, one of the first in the state. Now that we have Laura's Law, Prop 36 restored a drug court diversion, right? We need to use these tools in order to say we are here to help, and you may not know you need it, and that's not okay either. And so that we can get them the provision of those services that my colleague spoke about. So I am optimistic. We are in a new year. Hope springs eternal. I think that we are doing this for the right reasons, and hopefully we will have a better future for all of us, housed, unhoused, and in transition. And thank you all for being a part of making that change.
When we talk not just about our unhoused crisis, we also need to talk about our fentanyl-related deaths and the crisis that entails. Fentanyl has touched many, many lives and all demographics, whether you are young, whether you are old, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are white or whether you're black. Fentanyl has affected and traumatized so many different communities. And so we've seen, in terms of the fentanyl deaths in Sacramento County. And I want to take a moment, and I'm going to play a video in a moment talking about Cameron. And I'm going to invite Cameron's parents up at this time. I'd like Chris and Lisa to come up here as well and stand with me before we play the video about Cameron and what happened. And I do want to warn you that the short audio portion of the video is a bit traumatic. And we play the video and the audio not to sensationalize what happened to Cameron, but to turn the pain into power, the tragedy into triumph in terms of the devastation that fentanyl has wreaked on our community and our families, and to educate, to prevent. And so Cameron was a life that was lost way too early to fentanyl, and we'd like to share the video with you.
911, what's your emergency? We just found our son dead in his room.
Trade this cloud for a hurricane with enough water to wash away a flood to drown the ground that's falling out from under me, under me. Laced with all of my regrets, I cling to everything I've got left. And there's a feeling I have within, your tendencies have become mine.
This was a tragic death, but it is an all too common tragic death, and I'd like to introduce Cameron's parents, Chris and Lisa, to talk about their son, and then I'm going to talk about what we've tried to do this last year and what we're going to be doing this year to really make sure that there is not another loss of life.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it. All right, give me a quick breath here. On August 11th at 10 in the morning, my day started out with my daughter's husband now calling me and asking for a hand in marriage, which was a beautiful thing. So I thought when Robert was calling me at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he was calling to talk about it. But I answered the phone, and he told me Cameron was dead. Our son Cameron was taken from us far too soon at just 23 years old. While our hearts are shattered, I want to share with you the extraordinary young man that he was and a truth that everyone needs to hear. Cameron was a gentle giant, a soul whose physical presence was matched only by the size of his heart and incredible sense of humor. He had a remarkable ability to light up any room he entered, not just with his towering presence, but with his contagious laughter and perfectly timed wit. Even on the hardest days, Cameron could crack a joke or something witty that would have everyone laughing. His humor wasn't just funny, it was kind, bringing people together rather than pushing them apart. Anyone who met Cameron quickly discovered his gift for making others feel welcomed and valued. No matter who you were, he had a way of putting people at ease with his warm smile, general interest in their lives, and that mischievous twinkle in his eye that told you a joke might be coming. To his brothers and sisters, he was an incredible source of love, support, and endless entertainment. A kind of brother who could turn a simple family dinner into an unforgettable evening of laughter.
Today, we also want to speak about how we lost Cameron. On August 10th, 2021, Cameron had been out running errands all day. He came home that evening and ate dinner with us, and we talked about how he was going to start looking for a new job the next day, and how he was thinking about taking some college classes. He went to his room around 7:30, but not before giving me one last crushing hug and a kiss on my head. Unbeknownst to us, he had contacted someone late that night and arranged to buy Percocet from them. Unfortunately, the pills Cameron purchased were fake and contained a lethal dose of fentanyl. Early in the afternoon on August 11th, I did the most unthinkable thing a parent could ever have to do. I went to Cameron's room to wake him, and instead I found him dead in his bed. It was too late for us to help him. We will carry Cameron's spirit of welcoming love and joyful laughter forward. We will remember him in every laugh and every moment of joy, and we will honor his memory by sharing this urgent warning. There are no safe street drugs anymore, not one. What looks like a prescription pill could be poison in disguise.
Our gentle giant may no longer be with us physically, but we can prevent other families from experiencing the same devastating loss. If you or someone you know is thinking about taking a pill that didn't come from a pharmacy, please remember Cameron. Remember that one pill can take everything, all that potential, all that laughter, all that love away in an instant. Thank you for having us.
I want to thank Chris and Lisa for their bravery in sharing their heartbreak with us and turning pain into power, and I know Regina has as well with her daughter. And so faced with this fentanyl crisis that we see these fentanyl poisoning cases skyrocket, what do we do from a law enforcement perspective to deal with this? We started first with education and prevention. Our One Pill Can Kill program with Angela Webb and other people have reached over 100,000 people in the last several years, and it's actually made a tremendous difference on the education front. But then we also needed to make sure that we were focused on the prosecution and the interdiction front as well. And so last year, in partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, our federal partners, in partnership with our local law enforcement agencies, my office formed what we call the SAC Force Unit. It is a task force, fentanyl overdose response, criminal investigation enforcement team. And what happens in those situations is when we get a report from the coroner and a call that there's been a fentanyl death, our team, made up of investigator Brandon Oliveira and Leland Washington from our office, what they do is they report out, and they've been partnering with the Folsom Police Department as well to go out to the locations and to investigate. We seize the cell phone, we seize the evidence. We then conduct an investigation to try to put a case together to go after the drug dealer, to prosecute the drug dealer for murder. So prior to taking office in 2 years ago, my office had never prosecuted a single individual, a single drug dealer for selling fentanyl that resulted in death. And that was part of the issue previously in terms of investigating, looking at the case, and prosecuting the case. But since I was sworn into office, we have now charged 9 individuals for murder for selling fentanyl. And through the SAC Force team, where we have investigated 30 different cases, we have about 6 to 7 additional cases that are pending toxicology reports, where we will be looking at prosecuting additional people for murder. And it's about taking the drugs off the streets, whether it's in interdiction operations with the Sheriff's Department in finding bags of fentanyl, or whether it's with the Folsom Police Department, who've been great partners. And I want to bring up Lieutenant Canepa to talk about the Folsom Blues operation that we did, along with other partners in the jurisdiction, including probation and the Sheriff's Department. But I'd love for him to tell you about what we did with interdiction and how we're getting drugs off the streets and fentanyl.
Good morning, everyone. Lieutenant David Canepa with the Folsom Police Department. So our journey today really began in kind of early 2023. We began looking as a department, and specifically our Special Investigations Unit, on how we could impact the fentanyl crisis that we were seeing in our community. And one of the ways, as the DA mentioned, we looked at was how do we put together a prosecutable case for someone that has provided this deadly substance to someone that resulted in their death. And unfortunately, later that year, our detectives encountered such a scenario. And over the next 48 hours, in collaboration with the DA's office, our SIU detectives were able to put together a case and arrest this individual for murder. And those charges were eventually filed by the DA's office. And this was the first case in Sacramento County. Since then, our department has submitted an additional 4 cases to the DA's office, all which have been resulted in homicide or manslaughter charges. To expand our reach regionally, we've included a detective on the task force that the DA mentioned, and they are in the process of submitting several other cases, all of which have occurred in this region, and all of which will also likely include homicide charges. A key initiative of our strategy is street-level enforcement as well, and the DA mentioned the Folsom Blues operation. This operation was a Folsom SIU-led operation in collaboration with our DA's office. It included 11 agencies, federal, state, and local, all with the intent of focusing on drug dealers that utilize online marketplaces in order to sell drugs. And those are the type of online marketplaces that typically would target our youth. This operation lasted 2 days, and at the end of the 2 days, officers and agents had arrested 19 individuals. They seized thousands of dollars of drug proceeds, and they seized over 170,000 lethal dosage units of fentanyl that were taken off the street just through that 2-day operation. Thank you. So while enforcement is key, prevention is obviously the goal. And so at the Folsom Police Department, we regularly engage our community, our officers and detectives, to just increase awareness and to begin conversations about how this deadly drug makes its way out to our community, and often refer to the DA's One Pill Can Kill program. So just in closing, I want to thank the DA and his department for their support and guidance throughout this process. Without them, it wouldn't be possible. And also to the members of the Folsom Police Department for their continued dedication to keeping the citizens of Folsom safe. Thank you.
So there is hope, because when you look at the statistics here in terms of fentanyl deaths, starting in 2020, we had 108 fentanyl poisoning cases. And that number went up to 215 in 2021, 231 in 2022, It skyrocketed to 404 in 2023, and through the efforts of the SAC Force, through the efforts of education, and through the efforts that we have in interdiction with our law enforcement partner, this last year in 2024, the number dropped by 50% to 211 cases. That's 211 too many cases, but what we are doing is we are making a difference. We are making a difference. And not only are we making a difference in fentanyl-related matters and preserving promises, but we are also connecting with communities as well. And when we're talking about preserving promises and connecting with communities, we're talking about things that we're doing, for example, with Proposition 36. And Proposition 36 passed by 70% of the voters of the state of California. And Proposition 36, we were able to really deal with retail theft and eventually deal with homelessness and drug addiction and fentanyl. But in the process of working on Proposition 36, we really approached it from an organized retail theft as well. We started an organized retail theft program at the Sacramento DA's office and charged over 167 cases last year, totaling nearly $1 million in theft. And when you look at organized retail theft and theft in Sacramento has gone up nearly 70%, while other counties have gone up 11%. One of the big box stores in South Sacramento saw a 250% increase in retail theft in 1 year. A small business owner as well in the area, 6 out of 10 people walking in and out of their convenience store were committing theft. And so we started the organized retail theft program in Sacramento with great effect in partnership with many of our law enforcement partners here. But I also want to recognize and bring up Mayor Bobbie Singh-Allen, who is not only the mayor of Elk Grove, but also is a member of the American Petroleum Convenience Store Association representing small business owners. And she was a great partner along with San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan in terms of getting Proposition 36 across the ballot and passed by 70%. And I'd like to invite her up here.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you here for the second annual Public Safety Address. Hold it up. All right, very good. So the challenge for Prop 36 was not an easy battle, as many of you know. It started with not only qualifying this very important ballot initiative. You know, we were on the front lines in helping to raise the necessary funds to get it to the finish line. I represent, for my day job, the American Petroleum and Convenience Store Association. And I know, not only as a mayor, but as a leader representing the small business industry, that we are on the front lines when it comes to fentanyl, homelessness, and retail theft. And so we had to take those bold, courageous steps. And we were so proud to see the overwhelming support statewide for Proposition 36. My friend Thien Ho and I, along with the mayor of San Jose, we launched a committee along with the DAs who did an instrumental job helping us getting it qualified. But it was important for us to have this other committee to develop the messaging that was critical to getting it to the finish line. We focused on mass treatment, mass accountability, which was very important for the voters across this great state of California. But we were willing, as local government officials, to take on the leadership at the state capitol because we know what we were dealing with at the local level, what this looks like. So it's not easy when the governor and the attorney general and members of the legislature are targeting you and are against you. But you know what? Who we are ultimately accountable to? It's our constituents, our businesses. Those are the voices that matter, not leadership and not ideology, because at the end of the day, this was about doing the right thing, common sense solutions, not partisanship that continues to divide. We were asked a question, an important question, that Proposition 36 is going to cost too much. Well, I offer you this. We heard from the families of Cameron. It is costing us too much. The victims are paying the price for the fentanyl crisis. I offer you this. Our small business owners who have to close shop or move because of repeated retail theft, taking away from their livelihood. The vast majority of small business owners in the convenience store spectrum are immigrants. They came to this country to build on the American dream, not the nightmares that we see daily. So we are grateful to the voters of this great state for stepping up and doing the right thing and passing Proposition 36. We could not have done it without the support in this room and without the courageous support of our amazing district attorney. So I'm also proud to say that the state of our county for public safety is strong with an amazing dynamic leader as Thien Ho. Thank you, everyone.
Since Proposition 36 went into effect, we've actually filed several cases of 666.1, which is the retail theft offense. And let me give you one example. There was an individual that went into the famous footwear store in South Sacramento and walked out with over $500 worth of shoes. When loss prevention detained them and stopped them and law enforcement showed up, they found additional shoes and drugs in the car. That individual has been charged with a felony under Proposition 36. We had another individual that walked into JCPenney, grabbed a bunch of items, again, over $500, and just walked out of the store without paying for it. And when we looked in their criminal background, we realized that they had 9 prior theft convictions. This would have been a misdemeanor before Proposition 36, and we charged them with a felony. And then we have a case out of Elk Grove in which 2 individuals walked into multiple stores, stealing multiple items, and we were able to aggregate those under the provision in Prop 36 and charge both individuals with felonies because we are tired of thieves stealing without accountability. And that's what we're going to be doing in 2025 and beyond in an appropriate manner. I do want to talk briefly about our website. And on our website, we talk about Proposition 36 and the tools available for businesses and owners. Can I have the next slide, please? When we talk about preserving promises, this is what we're talking about in terms of following through on things that we have promised the public. Next slide, please. And I want to bring up here for a moment Supervising District Attorney Sonia Martinez Satchell. She ran our community outreach program and now runs our domestic violence unit. And she's going to talk about connecting with communities and also invite Franco Garcia up as well and some of the things that we've done in regards to connecting with communities.
Good morning. My name is Sonia Martinez Satchell. For the last 2 years, I had the opportunity to supervise our community outreach and media relations unit. Part of that assignment is to bring DA Thien Ho's visions to life. Part of that was our Community Relations Council. We began our Community Relations Council in 2023 in order to hear from diverse groups of our community what their concerns were. Concerns that may not necessarily result in criminal convictions, but clearly affect public safety. Our council met quarterly, where we discussed various issues and presented to the group possible solutions to resolve these public safety challenges. One of the things that we heard regularly was a need to connect with our community out in the community. And as a result of that, DA Thien Ho held a series of town halls throughout Sacramento County during 2024. One example of those town halls was recently with La Familia. And I would like to invite Franco Garcia to speak a little bit about La Familia.
Thank you, Sonia. My name is Franco Garcia. I'm here to speak about the relationship between the DA's office and the community at large. I was chosen to represent the Latino Community Advisory Team on the DA's Community Relations Council, which consists of teams that represent a variety of groups here in the county, including Asian, education, labor, African American, LGBTQ, and Native American teams, to name a few. In total, we have approximately 15 teams that meet quarterly with the DA and his team to discuss any and all matters that are brought up by the team's representatives. I took this opportunity to ask Thien Ho to come speak at a town hall at La Familia Counseling Centers last month to engage the Hispanic community and bring them insight as to what the Office of the DA does for them. La Familia is dear to my heart, as my parents, Eva and Frank Garcia, were founding members of the nonprofit over 40 years ago, and my mother still serves as a trustee on their board of directors. From their humble beginnings in a two-bedroom house on 28th Street and only one employee, La Familia is now a community leader that has grown to serve tens of thousands of people annually on their 2 campuses in South Sacramento in a variety of programs, helping all who enter, from expecting mothers to youth and the elderly, Latinos to Southeast Asians to Eastern Europeans. They are a pillar of hope and strength in an area of Sacramento that needs them. La Familia is embarking on a new mission to build an opportunity center on the corner of 37th Avenue and Franklin Boulevard to serve the surrounding community by offering a variety of new possibilities, including classes in solar panel installation and electric vehicle battery construction. The construction will begin this year. The Hispanic community, as other ethnic groups, are very suspect on reaching out to law enforcement in times of crisis. At the town hall, Thien and his team brought an important part of what the DA's office tasked to do with the community: engage them, see them, and understand them. With about 30 attendees on a cold and rainy evening, we had a robust discussion on what the DA's office role is in Sacramento County. There was a question and answer period at the end of the presentation that was filled with questions about security, law enforcement, and a myriad of other topics that affect the Latino community at large. The entire town hall was translated to Spanish in real time for those that did not speak the language. Needless to say, the community welcomed the conversation and is looking forward to this type of engagement continuing with your office. Here's to a DA who is showing the people of Sacramento what it is to be a true community team player. We appreciate you and your staff.
And with that, we reaffirm our commitment to continue to connect with communities throughout the coming year. Thank you.
I'm mindful of the time, and so I'd like to move to the last section, which is protecting people. And I want to talk with you when it comes to protecting people. You know, we talk about some of the most serious cases that we face are the homicide cases. And I do want to show a statistic there, and we're going to move it forward right here in terms of the number of homicide cases in Sacramento. In 2022, we had 124 homicides. We were able to drop those numbers down in 2023 to 95, and in 2024, we had 94 homicides. But when we're talking about protecting people, I want to put this on your radar. How many of you folks have heard of the Tesla dad who drove his car off the cliff to try to kill his family? All right, some of you have. So he drove his family in a Tesla vehicle off a cliff trying to kill them, attempted murder. They survived. What happened was, in that case, his attorney applied for mental health diversion. This is a law that very few people outside the law know about. So with mental health diversion, what happens is for pretty much any crime except for murder, child molestation, and rape, except for those crimes, you can essentially commit an attempted murder, a carjacking, a robbery. And what would happen is you say you have a mental condition. You get a doctor's note. And the judge has to presume that because of that doctor's note that your mental condition, whatever it is, anxiety, ADHD, cause you to commit the crime. And then the only way to prevent you from getting mental health diversion, which means you get released out of custody, which means you go and take some program or class and then get your charges dismissed. We're talking about attempted murder, carjacking, and robbery. The district attorney has to prove by clear and convincing evidence, the same standard that it requires to take your children away from you. We have to prove that you are in the future going to commit a murder, a rape, or a child molestation. As a result of mental health diversion and the disaster it is, we have seen a series of public safety disasters. This is Dennis. I want to thank his family for being here today and his friends. Mr. Muslim was charged with felony evading from the police, a felony, reckless evasion from the police. And what happened was he requested mental health diversion here in Sacramento, and over my office's objection, he received mental health diversion. He was not compliant with his medication, and while in the mental health diversion program, he was out of custody. And while out of custody, the defendant, Mr. Muslim, brutally stabbed and killed county health worker Dennis. Stabbed him through the head and killed him. A tragedy that could have been prevented. And then we have a gang case in Sacramento that in May of 2022, 2 different rival gang members engaged in a shooting at the OK Corral, essentially, and started shooting at each other. We had a 2-month-old baby sitting in a car that was injured by broken flying glass. We had a 13-year-old sitting there with his father, cut and injured by flying glass in a gang shooting. This was an attempted murder, a gang shooting case, and one of these defendants received mental health diversion, which means they get out of custody, which means they then take a class, and then the charges are dismissed and expunged from their record as if it never existed. Then we have a case of Camaria, and I believe that her family is here. Camaria was on a sleepover, 15-year-old with her friend. And while she was over on this sleepover, Camaria's friend, the friend's mother, the defendant, gave Camaria a Percocet pill that the mother, the defendant of the mother of the friend, illegally bought on the street. That pill was actually fentanyl, and Camaria died. This defendant received mental health diversion for that case. Then we have a domestic violence case in Sacramento in which the victim was 12 weeks pregnant with the defendant's child. The defendant grabbed the victim and began choking her, causing her to lose consciousness for almost 20 minutes. When the victim awoke, she had an orbital fracture around her eye and bruising on her face. The defendant for this domestic violence case received mental health diversion. Released from custody, a class, and the charges will be dismissed. And the number one indicator of homicide in the future in a domestic violence situation is strangulation. And then one of the worst cases that I have ever heard about originated in Southern California. We had a defendant who went to prison and served 7 years for assault with a deadly weapon causing great bodily injury. That defendant served the 7 years, got released, and was living in Orange County when he then, with a machete, stabbed and hacked away an innocent bystander who just happened to be walking by. An attempted murder case. The judge in Orange County granted mental health diversion, released the individual from custody, put in ankle monitoring, and sent him to LA for treatment. That individual absconded and escaped from the treatment center. And while wearing the GPS monitoring, ended up outside a 7-Eleven store in LA and stabbed an innocent bystander over 30 times. The individual, the victim, survived. And now the defendant has been charged with attempted murder. And guess what his attorney get to ask for? Mental health diversion. And the problem with the mental health diversion law, as the court, and this is from a judge on the appellate court said, the legislature does not want courts to deny mental health diversion. Our decision is compelled by the policy decision made by our elected representatives. We are duty-bound to enforce the laws as written. Whether or not we agree with public safety risks, the law accepts as permissible. The judge's hands are tied. They don't have discretion for mental health diversion. So this is the public safety crisis that we're facing. And looking forward, what are we doing? I'd like to bring up here my good friend, Assemblymember Stephanie Nguyen, who is proposing legislation to deal with mental health diversion. We did a similar legislation last year, and this year she's bringing back additional legislation.
Thank you. Thank you. And the DA is correct. Many of the cases you've heard and what you're hearing today is real. It was brought to my attention 2 years ago, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that an individual that would create such a crime would be eligible for a mental health diversion program and be released out there in the community. But let me say that again. The magic word was attempted murder. The difference between murder and attempted murder is that the victim survived. And if the victim survived, the attacker is eligible for this mental health diversion program. 2 years ago, when we introduced this bill in partnership with the DA's office, it went through our Public Safety Committee. And at the time, our mayor of Sacramento, currently now, Kevin McCarty, was chair of Public Safety. And he made sure that that flew out of Public Safety with unanimous support. It flew out of Assembly Public Safety, but held up in approps. And I know our senators here, and I can tell you that if it made it to her desk, to her, she would have absolutely voted for something like this. Because while the quote in there talked about the legislator, not all of us believe that to be true, which is why we reintroduced this bill this year, AB 46, to add attempted murder to the list of crimes ineligible for mental health diversion. And this may be the first time that you're all hearing about this, but this cannot be the last time you talk about this. You're asking, what can I do to help? You can do a lot. You all are constituents of a legislator, senator, an assembly member. You have friends and family up and down California. When this gets to committee, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, for the sake of our community, for the sake of lives that have lost, you need to call your legislator and tell them they have to vote for this. Tell them that this can happen to anybody, not just in South Sacramento or North Sac and those communities. It happened in the city of Elk Grove. It happened in Thousand Oaks. It happens in San Diego. It happens in Roseville. It happens up and down the state of California more times than we think, more times than we know, more times than we even hear about. But we can stop this and we can make changes. And I'm grateful to have a district attorney like Thien Ho, because what you saw today, when he talked about partnership and collaboration, the senator and I work with many DAs up and down California, and I can tell you this, I've never seen a DA at a public safety address pull up your local city council members and mayors, your county supervisors, police department, folks from the community to share this stage with him and talk about the things that he is doing here in the community. And not just in the community, but up and down the state. I am so honored and proud to be able to author AB 46, and I look forward to seeing this get signed by the governor this year. Thank you so much.
So we will end the public safety address, the second annual, talking about that original quote that I had mentioned earlier. And I have faith and I have hope, and I want to thank Assemblymember Stephanie Nguyen for her courage and her dedication on passing this. But I've talked about this repeatedly with our state senator, Ashby, who's very supportive of mental health diversion, change, and discretion. But this is important, and I want to thank you for bringing this. At the end of the day, it's important to remember that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that's exactly where we will be going this year in 2025. Thank you so much, and see you next year.